I was 71 when I saw myself walking down the street. At least, that's what I thought. It was a chilly afternoon, the kind that makes your bones ache and your heart crave company. I was returning from the small grocery shop down on Oak Ridge Avenue, clutching my bag of bread, milk, and arthritis cream, when I noticed her. The way she moved, the rhythm of her steps, even the tilt of her head, every detail was mine. Her coat looked exactly like the one I used to wear in my teaching days, navy blue, with a missing button near the collar. I froze right there on the pavement, my breath fogging the air. She looked just like me, only younger, sharper, and somehow bolder. She turned slightly, and my world tilted, because the face I saw was my own. I blinked hard. Maybe my mind was playing tricks on me again, the kind of tricks it had been playing ever since my husband died 3 years ago. But no, this wasn't grief. This was real. The woman laughed, tossing her hair over her shoulder, and I swear she had my voice, my laugh, my smile. For days, I couldn't stop thinking about her. I told myself it was coincidence. Maybe she just resembled me. But that night, when I went to pay my electricity bill online, the screen froze with a red message. Account suspended due to multiple failed login attempts. Then my phone rang an unfamiliar number. Mrs. Eleanor Barnes? A stern voice asked. This is from the bank. We're calling to confirm the mortgage extension you applied for. My hand trembled. Mortgage? I don't have a mortgage. The voice hesitated. It says here you refinanced your home 6 months ago. Are you saying that wasn't you? I didn't even answer. I dropped the phone and sat in the silence of my small kitchen, staring at the old clock ticking above the window. It was 3:17 p.m., the same hour my husband used to come home for tea. For a moment, I could almost hear his voice. Ellie, you worry too much. But this time, it wasn't just worry. Something was terribly wrong. Over the next few days, my world started to unravel. Strange letters, arrived credit card bills I never opened, medical reports from hospitals I'd never visited, and even an invitation to a neighborhood gala addressed to me, but with a different address. Every piece of paper whispered the same nightmare. Someone was living my life. And then one morning, I got a call from my old friend Martha. Ellie, she said cheerfully, I saw you at the charity dinner last night. You looked wonderful. That red dress stunning. I nearly dropped the phone. Martha, I whispered, I wasn't there. There was silence. Oh, stop teasing me, she laughed. You even introduced yourself as Eleanor Barnes. You said you were busy with new real estate ventures now. You even talked about that beach house you bought. My throat went dry. Beach house? Yes, down in Clearwater Bay. You said you finally got the peace you deserved after your husband's passing. You were glowing, dear. I hung up without saying another word. That night, I couldn't sleep. The shadows on the ceiling seemed alive, stretching and twisting as if whispering secrets I wasn't ready to hear. I pulled out an old photo album and stared at the smiling faces my husband, my daughter, young and radiant, before everything fell apart. My daughter, Lydia. We hadn't spoken properly in almost 3 years. After her father's death, she changed. She blamed me for everything, for his heart attack, for her failed marriage, for the fact that I didn't have more money to give her. She said I'd stolen her youth by making her take care of me. She left one night, slamming the door, promising never to return. But as I looked at the woman Martha saw, the thought crept in like a ghost. Could it be her? The next morning I went to the bank in person. The young man at the counter typed my name and frowned. "Mrs. Barnes, you already came in last week. We finalized your signature change." "My what?" I gasped. He turned the screen slightly, showing me the digital copy of my signature, my name, written perfectly in my hand. "You even provided new identification. We verified it through your Social Security and driver's license. But I never—" My voice broke. He gave me a sympathetic smile. "You might want to talk to your daughter again. She seemed to know exactly what she was doing." I froze. "My daughter?" "Yes. Miss Lydia Barnes. She said you were sick and wanted her to manage your finances for a while. I walked out of the bank with numb legs and trembling hands. My mind replayed every conversation, every argument, every time she said I owed her. The betrayal burned so deep it made me dizzy. My daughter, my only child, had taken everything from me, and now she was me. I didn't tell anyone for weeks. I felt ashamed, humiliated. How do you tell people your own child has stolen your name, your money, your very existence? I watched from the sidelines as Eleanor Barnes appeared on social media again, smiling in restaurants, holding wine glasses, posting quotes about second chances. And people believed it. Friends commented, "So glad to see you thriving, Ellie." But it wasn't me. It was her. 2 months later, I finally worked up the courage to drive to the address listed on that gala invitation, the new home of Eleanor Barnes. My heart pounded as I parked outside a modern townhouse with my name on the mailbox. And when the door opened, I saw her. Lydia stood there, wearing my old pearl necklace, the one her father gave me on our 25th anniversary. Her hair was styled like mine. Even her lipstick was the same muted rose shade I'd worn for years. She smiled as if she'd been expecting me. "Hello, Mother," she said softly. Or should I say, me? She stood there, calm and composed, as though she'd rehearsed that moment 1,000 times in front of the mirror. My mirror. The same mirror she must have taken when she emptied my old house. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. The wind rustled the trees, and I could hear the faint laughter of children playing nearby, ordinary sounds of an ordinary day. But for me, the world had stopped spinning. "Lydia," I finally whispered, my voice trembling. "What have you done?" She tilted her head, studying me like a stranger. "You should be thanking me, Mother," she said slowly. "I've saved your reputation." "My reputation?" I echoed, stunned. "You've stolen my life. You took my money, my house, my name." She smiled, stepping aside as if inviting me in. "Then come in, Mother. See what I've done with your miserable little world." I hesitated, but curiosity overpowered fear. Inside, the house looked like a twisted reflection of my past familiar furniture, the same lace curtains, even my old family photographs. Except in every frame, my face was missing, replaced, cropped out, or worse, subtly altered. In some pictures, Lydia's face had been edited to resemble mine. The air smelled of lavender and deceit. She poured herself a glass of wine and leaned casually against the kitchen counter. "You always told me I was ungrateful," she began. "But you never realized how ungrateful you were. Dad worshipped you, and you let him die miserable. You made me grow up in your shadow, cleaning your tears, listening to your endless guilt. You never gave me the life I deserved." My throat tightened. "And this is your revenge, pretending to be me?" She shrugged. "You were wasting your name, your credit, your house, your history. It was all just rotting away while you sat alone crying. I decided to put it to use. I could barely breathe. You forged my documents?" "Not forged," she said with a smirk. "I became you. New driver's license, passport renewal, signature update. Do you know how easy it is when the system already thinks you're the same person? No one questions a daughter who knows her mother's life better than the mother herself." Tears blurred my vision. "You're sick," I whispered. Her expression hardened. "Don't call me that. I built something out of the mess you left behind. I paid off your debts, sold the old cottage, and people love me now. Everyone says Eleanor Barnes finally found peace. Isn't that what you always wanted?" My heart pounded with anger and disbelief. "Peace? You call identity theft peace?" She laughed bitterly. "You don't understand. I lived as you because it was easier than living as me. You were loved. You were respected. All I had was failure. When I put on your name, doors opened. People smiled. Men listened. It felt powerful." Her words sliced through me like glass. "You could have come home, Lydia," I said softly. "You didn't need to steal from me. You just needed to ask." "I did ask," she snapped. "You said you couldn't help me. You said your pension barely covered your expenses. So I helped myself." The room began to spin. I grabbed the edge of the counter to steady myself. "You've destroyed me. Do you realize that? The bank froze my accounts. My credit is ruined. I can't even prove who I am anymore." She leaned closer, her perfume sickly sweet. "Then maybe it's time you stopped being Eleanor Barnes," she whispered. "Let me carry the name now. You can fade quietly. Nobody will notice." The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. I could hear my heartbeat echoing in my ears. "You're not my daughter anymore," I said, my voice shaking. "You're a stranger in my skin." She didn't flinch. She just smiled coldly, as if she'd been expecting those words all along. "That's fine, because I stopped being your daughter 2 years ago." That night, I drove home in tears, gripping the steering wheel until my hands ached. The moonlight caught my reflection in the rear-view mirror, and for the first time in my life, I didn't recognize the woman staring back. The next morning, I went to the police. I told them everything, how my daughter had stolen my identity, taken over my accounts, and was living under my name. The young officer looked sympathetic but helpless. "Mrs. Barnes," he said carefully, "do you have any evidence? Any bank records, ID cards, or witnesses?" I shook my head. Lydia had them all. My Social Security card, my old license, even my passport. Every piece of paper that proved I existed gone. He sighed. "Without proof, It's your word against hers, and since she's been using your identity for over a year, the system recognizes her as you. We'll need time to investigate." "Time," I whispered. "She's living my life right now." He hesitated, then said something that made my blood run cold. "Mrs. Barnes, are you sure you're not mistaken? Maybe you're confusing things due to your age or medication?" I stared at him, horrified. "You think I'm imagining this?" He looked uncomfortable. "It happens, ma'am. Family disputes, memory issues, identity cases can get complicated." I walked out shaking, humiliated again. Even the law couldn't see me anymore. That evening I received an email. The subject line read, "You should have stayed quiet." No sender name, no signature, just one sentence. "If you try to ruin this, you'll lose more than your name." I deleted it immediately, but the damage was done. I stopped sleeping. I locked my doors, checked my windows twice, and jumped every time the phone rang. I couldn't even tell Martha the truth. Who would believe an old woman claiming her daughter had replaced her? Weeks passed like a blur of fear and confusion. Then one night, as I sorted through old photo albums, I noticed something strange. In one of the pictures, our family Christmas photo, someone had carefully scratched my face out. I turned the page, same thing, and another. Every photo where I smiled, my face was gone. I realized then it wasn't just my identity Lydia wanted. She wanted my existence erased. But I wasn't going to let her win. I decided to fight back. Not with anger, but with truth. I started keeping records, printing emails, photographing letters, writing down every date and time she'd impersonated me. If the world had forgotten who Eleanor Barnes was, I'd remind them one piece of evidence at a time. And deep down, a darker question began to whisper. If my daughter could become me so completely, what was she planning next? Because the more I looked into her eyes that day, the more I realized Lydia didn't just steal my name. She wanted my lifespan. It's strange how the world can keep spinning while your life is quietly being stolen. I used to think identity theft was something that happened to people far away, names on news reports, faces in headlines. But now it was personal, intimate. It was my daughter. Weeks turned into months. My health began to fail under the weight of constant anxiety. Every letter that arrived in the mail made my stomach twist. Every ring of the doorbell felt like a threat. My reflection, once comforting, now mocked me, because the woman in the mirror no longer existed in the eyes of the world. I was a ghost in my own life. The police barely followed up. "We're still looking into it," they'd say, in polite tones that meant nothing. Lydia, no, I was living comfortably. Every trace of who I was had been scrubbed clean and replaced by her perfect imitation. And then one morning, my neighbor, old Mr. Pierce, knocked on my door holding a letter. "You dropped this at the post office," he said kindly. I took it, puzzled it was addressed to Eleanor Barnes at my old home address. "I hadn't lived there in almost a year. The return address," said Clearwater Legal Services. Inside was a letter that made my blood run cold. "Dear Mrs. Barnes, your recent request to update your will has been received. As per your instructions, your estate, assets, and remaining funds will be transferred upon your passing to your daughter, Miss Lydia Barnes. Please confirm once again by phone before December 12. I read it again and again. My hands trembled so violently that the paper tore in half. She wasn't just living as me, she was preparing for my death. I rushed to the phone and called the number on the letter. "There's been a mistake," I shouted. "I didn't sign any new will." The woman on the other end was calm, professional. "But Mrs. Barnes, you were here last week. You signed it yourself. We verified your ID." "I wasn't there," I cried. "That was my daughter." A pause, then a sigh. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but all documents check out. We have your photo from that day. Would you like me to email it?" My heart sank. "Yes," I whispered. When the email arrived, I opened it with trembling fingers. The image loaded slowly, but there she was, Lydia, wearing my clothes, my necklace, sitting in an office chair with her head slightly tilted the way I always did in photos, and smiling, calm, confident, alive. She looked more like me than I did. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark, staring at the photo, my tea gone cold beside me. I realized then that Lydia wasn't just stealing convenience, she was planning something final, something that would make her the only Eleanor Barnes the world would ever remember. 2 days later, I went to visit my doctor, Dr. Patel, to refill my medication. He frowned when he saw me. "Mrs. Barnes, I thought you'd already come in this week for your physical." My chest tightened. "What?" "Yes," he said, checking his notes. "You looked fine. You even requested a new prescription, same blood pressure tablets, but a higher dose. I warned you about that." My voice dropped to a whisper. "Doctor, that wasn't me." He froze, then gave a half-smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I think you should rest more. Stress can cause confusion." I wanted to scream, but instead I left quietly, because I understood something awful. She had infiltrated every part of my life, my health, my finances, even my medical history. If something happened to me now, no one would question it. The world would just assume the real Eleanor Barnes had died of old age, and then Lydia would inherit everything. Days passed like years. I stopped opening the curtains. I spoke to no one except the few people who still remembered me. Martha came by once, cheerful as ever. "Ellie, dear, you missed such a lovely lunch last week. You said you couldn't come because of your new business trip." I stared at her, cold creeping down my spine. "I didn't say that." Martha laughed nervously. "Oh, don't be silly. You called me yourself." Her laughter faded when she saw my face. "Ellie, what's wrong?" I opened my mouth to tell her everything, but the words caught in my throat. What if she didn't believe me? What if she thought I was senile, paranoid, or losing my mind like everyone else did? Instead, I forced a weak smile. "Nothing, dear. Must have been a misunderstanding." But inside, something broke. That night, I went through my old drawers, searching for anything to prove I was who I said I was. I found my old high school yearbook, my teaching certificate, love letters from my husband. I kept them all in a box and wrote on the lid, proof that I existed. It was a pathetic attempt, but it gave me comfort. I needed to remind myself that I was real. Then, one morning, a police car pulled up outside my small apartment. My heart stopped. 2 officers came to the door. One of them looked at me strangely. "Mrs. Barnes?" "Yes," I said cautiously. "Ma'am, we're following up on a report filed in your name." "In my name?" He nodded. "Apparently, you've been reported missing." For a second, I didn't understand. "Missing?" He glanced at his tablet. "Your daughter, Miss Lydia Barnes, filed it last night. She claims you've been unstable and possibly suffering from dementia. She's asking for welfare custody to ensure your safety." My knees buckled. I gripped the doorframe to stay upright. No, that's not true. She's lying. She's trying to erase me." The younger officer looked uncomfortable. "We just need to confirm your mental and physical state, ma'am. If everything checks out, you'll be fine." They asked me a series of questions: my address, my birth date, the names of my parents. I answered them all correctly, but I saw the doubt flicker in their eyes. They didn't know who to believe. When they finally left, I locked the door and collapsed onto the floor. Tears poured down my face as I realized how deep Lydia's deception had gone. She had become me so thoroughly that the world believed her and pitied me. And yet, deep inside that despair, a strange strength began to grow. I'd spent months being afraid, humiliated, invisible, but something inside me whispered that fear was exactly what she wanted. So I made a decision. I would stop running. I would stop crying. I would find proof and expose her. It wouldn't be easy. She had taken my life apart piece by piece. But she had forgotten one thing. I was her mother. I knew her fears, her lies, her habits. I knew the cracks in her confidence. And somewhere, buried under all that cruelty, was still the little girl who once clung to my hand in the dark. If she could become me, then maybe I could use that against her. The woman who stole my identity didn't realize she'd awakened the one person who knew exactly how to destroy her. I started small, a notebook hidden under the loose floorboard by my bed. Every night, I wrote what happened that day, every call, every letter, every strange face that looked at me twice. I wrote in trembling hands but clear mind, so that when they called me confused, I could show them proof of my sanity. The first step was to find out how far she had gone. I remembered Lydia once mentioned using my maiden name for security questions. I still had an old storage unit under that name, Eleanor Hargrove. Forgotten, unpaid for years. I went there one foggy morning, heart pounding as I turned the rusted key. Inside, covered in dust and cobwebs, were boxes of my life-old teaching papers, tax receipts, my wedding veil, even my first passport. I sat on the cold floor and cried not out of sadness, but relief. It was like touching my own fingerprints again. These papers could prove I existed before Lydia ever tried to erase me. But I wasn't foolish. I knew she might be watching. Every time I used my phone, I imagined her on the other end, smiling, listening. So I stopped calling from home. I used payphones. I paid in cash. I moved like a criminal even though I was the victim. A week later, I found something unexpected in that storage box, a letter from Lydia's old psychiatrist, dated years ago, just after her father's death. My hands shook as I read the words. Lydia exhibits signs of dissociation and identity confusion, strong resentment toward maternal figure, urgent need for continued therapy. My heart broke. I had ignored the signs back then. Her anger, her obsession with comparing herself to me, her sudden mood swings, I'd thought it was grief. But maybe it was something deeper. Maybe she had been slipping away long before she stole my name. Still, sympathy didn't matter now. She'd crossed a line. That night, I devised a plan simple but risky. If Lydia wanted to live as me, I would let her think she'd won. Then I'd make her reveal herself publicly. I would lure her into a trap she wouldn't see coming. I went to the public library, used one of their computers, and created a new email, one she couldn't trace, under the name E. Hargrove. I sent her a message. Mrs. Barnes, we have information about a fraud investigation linked to your Social Security number. Please confirm your identity in person at the courthouse on March 12. I knew Lydia couldn't resist. The one thing she feared more than being caught was losing control of the lie. 2 days passed with no reply. Then an email came back. Thank you for notifying me. I'll be there. The trap was set. March 12 arrived cold and bright. I wore a plain coat and scarf, blending into the crowd outside the courthouse. My heart thundered as I saw her arrive, confident, composed, carrying my old handbag. She looked radiant, like a woman at the top of her world. I stayed hidden behind a pillar, my phone recording as she spoke to the clerk. I'm Mrs. Eleanor Barnes, she said smoothly, showing her ID. I received a message about a fraud case. The clerk frowned. We have no such case on record, ma'am. Lydia's expression faltered for just a second. Then she smiled, that same rehearsed, empty smile she always used when cornered. Oh, perhaps it was a mistake. I stepped forward then, my heart hammering so hard I thought I might collapse. No mistake, I said. She turned, and when her eyes met mine, I saw pure panic flash across her face before she smoothed it into calm. Mother, she said lightly, what are you doing here? Stopping you, I said. You're under investigation, and not just by me anymore. A man stepped closer, the investigator I had hired, with what little money I had left. He held the printed records from my storage unit, old IDs, tax slips, medical bills. Ma'am, he said to Lydia, we need to verify your identification. Her smile cracked. You can't do this, she hissed. I am her. But when the investigator compared the signatures mine from 20 years ago and hers from the recent bank forms, the difference was subtle but clear. The angle, the pressure. You couldn't fake history. The scene drew attention. People stared. Phones came out. Lydia's mask began to crumble. You don't understand, she shouted. She gave up her life. She doesn't want it anymore, I whispered, barely audible. You took it without asking. She lunged toward me, eyes wild, and for a moment I saw the little girl she once was, desperate, frightened, lost. The officers arrived, calm but firm. She screamed as they led her away. You're nothing without me. You'll die alone." When it was over, the courthouse felt silent. My legs gave out, and I sat on the steps, shaking. People whispered around me, some sympathetic, others judgmental. A woman offered me her handkerchief. "I'm so sorry," she said softly. "That was your daughter?" I nodded, tears falling freely now. "It used to be. The following weeks were a blur of statements, interviews, and legal battles. Lydia was charged with fraud and impersonation, but her lawyer claimed mental instability. I didn't argue. Maybe he was right. Maybe the daughter I raised had been gone long before she took my name. I testified in court only once. When they asked if I wanted to press for a longer sentence, I hesitated. All those years, I had wanted her to see me, to understand me. But the truth was, I just wanted peace. I don't want her to suffer, I told the judge quietly. I just want my life back. The judge nodded kindly. Then we'll give you that, Mrs. Barnes. But life doesn't return easily once it's been stolen. The world had my name again, yes, but the damage lingered. My reputation, my trust, my sense of self, all scarred. Even now, people hesitate when they meet me. Some whisper, "Isn't she that woman whose daughter pretended to be her?" And yet, sometimes in my lonelier hours I think of Lydia. I imagine her in that hospital, quiet, staring at the wall. Does she think she is me still? Does she remember who she was before she wore my life like a costume? Sometimes I wonder if the real tragedy isn't what she did to me, but what she did to herself. Because in the end, I survived. She didn't. The day they sent her to the psychiatric facility was strangely quiet. No rain, no wind, just that heavy silence before a storm. I stood at the courthouse steps, watching the van doors close behind her. She didn't look at me, not once. Her eyes were distant, fixed on something beyond the world we both lived in. "Mrs. Barnes," the officer said gently, "we'll keep you updated on her condition." I nodded, unable to speak. How could I explain that the woman they were taking away had once been my baby, my only child, my reason for surviving my husband's death? How could I tell them that a part of me was being driven away in that same van? The newspapers loved the story. "Daughter steals mother's identity for 2 years," the headlines screamed. Reporters knocked on my door, wanting statements, interviews, photographs. I refused them all. What could I say? That I didn't hate her? That despite everything I still set a place for her at the dinner table some nights out of habit? For weeks I lived in silence. My name was restored, my accounts reactivated, but I felt hollow. Every document I signed now felt fragile, like it could dissolve into someone else's handwriting at any moment. Then, one morning, I received a letter. The return address made my hands tremble. Oakwood Psychiatric Center. I opened it slowly. "Mother, I don't expect you to forgive me. I know I ruined everything. They keep asking me why I did it, but I can't explain it. When Dad died, I lost the only person who saw me. You became smaller after that, sad, invisible, and I couldn't bear it. I wanted to be strong, like you used to be. But somewhere along the way, I forgot who I was. I thought if I became you, maybe I could fix both of us. They say I'll get better, but I don't know what better means anymore. Please remember me as I was before all this. I still remember your hands braiding my hair. I still remember you singing when you cooked. Love, Lydia. Tears blurred the words. For the first time in months, I allowed myself to cry not the angry, broken sobs of betrayal, but the quiet grief of a mother who has lost her child in a way that can never be undone. I didn't visit her right away. I wasn't ready. But her letter haunted me. Every night I'd hear her voice in the house, calling softly like she did when she was young. "Mom, you awake?" Finally, after 2 months, I gathered the courage. Oakwood was an old building on the outskirts of town, gray and lifeless. The receptionist led me down a narrow hallway that smelled of antiseptic and loneliness. When I entered her room, she was sitting by the window, humming to herself. For a moment she didn't see me. Then, slowly, she turned her head. Her face softened. "Mother!" I nodded, holding back tears. "It's me, Lydia." She smiled faintly. "You came." I sat beside her. The silence between us was thick with all the years we'd lost. Her hands, so thin now, fidgeted with the hem of her sleeve. "I read your letter," I said softly. "You said you forgot who you were. Why, Lydia? Why didn't you just come home?" Her eyes filled with tears. "Because home stopped feeling real after Dad died. You were there, but you weren't you. I thought maybe if I became you, I could keep us both alive." I swallowed hard. "By stealing my life?" She looked away. It didn't feel like stealing at first. It felt like rescuing something that was fading. "I wore your clothes. I cooked your recipes. I even listened to your old music. For a while, I thought I was healing you. But then—" She paused. "Then—" I urged gently. Her voice broke. "Then I started believing it. I wasn't pretending anymore. I was you. And when I looked in the mirror, I couldn't find Lydia. She just disappeared. I felt my heart twist. How do you hate someone for wanting to be you when all they ever wanted was to be loved by you? We sat together for hours that day, talking about the years before everything fell apart, the beach trips, her first recital, the nights we laughed until we cried. It felt almost normal again. Almost. As I stood to leave, she looked up at me. "Do you think I can ever be me again?" she asked. I forced a smile through my tears. "Yes, darling, you always were. You just forgot for a while." She nodded, whispering, "Then maybe you can forget for a while too." I didn't understand then what she meant. But I would. Weeks later, I began receiving small notes in my mailbox. No envelope, just folded paper, always unsigned but written in Lydia's handwriting. They said things like, "I miss your handwriting," and "You're doing great, Mother." At first, I thought the hospital staff might be delivering them, maybe part of her therapy. But when I called Oakwood, they said Lydia hadn't written to anyone in weeks. She'd become withdrawn, quiet, refusing to speak. The letters kept coming, each one more personal, more knowing. "You're drinking too much tea lately. You're leaving the porch light on again." Someone was watching me. I began locking my doors twice. Still, The letters appeared every morning on my doorstep. One day, I found one on my pillow. My knees gave out when I read it. You said I'd always been me, but what if I was never her to begin with? I went straight to Oakwood the next morning. The nurse looked confused when I asked about Lydia. "Mrs. Barnes," she said gently, "your daughter was transferred to another facility 2 weeks ago. She's under new care now. We don't have forwarding details. Transferred to where? No one could tell me. No one even had paperwork showing who authorized the move. When I got home that evening, there was another note waiting for me. You're not safe there. She's still inside you." I froze. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. The handwriting this one was mine. I sat in the dark, clutching that note, unable to breathe. Was Lydia sending these? Or was someone else? Or, terrifyingly, was I? Because, as I looked closer at the letters, the ink, the shape of the words, I realized something horrible. The pen strokes weren't hers. They were mine. Had I written them in my sleep? That night, I didn't sleep at all. I sat in the chair by the window, staring at the reflection in the glass. My face stared back, pale and hollow. For a moment, I thought I saw Lydia's smile flicker across my lips. The woman in the reflection whispered, barely audible, "Maybe she didn't steal your life. Maybe you gave it to her." The nights after that became unbearable. I started hearing soft movements in the house, the whisper of slippers on wooden floors, the faint click of doors that I knew I had locked. Sometimes I'd wake up in my armchair, the window open, the curtains swaying like hands waving goodbye. My notebook where I kept every detail of Lydia's fraud would be moved, pages turned, handwriting I didn't remember writing filling the margins. At first, I told myself it was exhaustion. The mind, when bruised enough, begins to trick you. But one night, as I was washing the teacups, I saw it again. My reflection in the window, but she didn't move when I did. She stayed perfectly still, smiling faintly. For a breathless moment I thought I saw Lydia's eyes looking back at me through my own face. I screamed, dropped the cup, and it shattered across the sink. When I turned on the light, the reflection was normal again, tired, gray-haired, frightened but mine. I told myself to stop imagining ghosts. Yet when I looked down at my hands, there were faint ink stains on my fingers, and in my pocket was a folded piece of paper. "Stop looking for her. You'll lose yourself again. Again." The word chilled me. I tore the note into pieces and flushed it away, but the thought wouldn't leave me. What if Lydia had never left? What if, in some way, she'd found her way back, not physically, but through the cracks she had carved in my mind? The following morning, I went back to Oakwood. The nurse frowned when I insisted on seeing Lydia's doctor. He was a small man with tired eyes who looked at me like someone stepping carefully around glass. "Mrs. Barnes," he said softly, "your daughter's case is complicated. She suffered from what we call a dissociative identity disorder. She created an alternate version of herself, a protector, someone she believed was stronger, wiser, unbreakable. That person was you." I stared at him. "She became me because she thought I was stronger?" He nodded. "She didn't mean to destroy you. She thought she was preserving you inside her. I shook my head. But you transferred her. Where is she now? He looked genuinely puzzled. Transferred? No, Mrs. Barnes, there was no transfer order. Lydia died 3 weeks ago. The room tilted. No, I whispered. That can't be true. She refused food for days. Her heart gave out in her sleep. I'm sorry. He said more, but I didn't hear him. My ears rang with one thought 3 weeks ago. That was when the first letter appeared on my doorstep. When I got home, I searched every corner of the house, desperate for something, anything that made sense. In the drawer where I kept my old teaching certificates, I found another note tucked beneath the papers. You said you'd always be with me, Mother. Now I'm keeping my promise. The air left my lungs. I stumbled backward, clutching the edge of the table. The room felt smaller, the walls pressing in. For a long while I stood there, trying to convince myself it was a coincidence, a leftover note she'd written before her death, but deep down I knew it wasn't. The handwriting was fresh, the ink still glistening. That night, I lit a candle and sat in front of the mirror. I stared at my reflection for hours, searching for proof that I was still me. My eyes were bloodshot, my face thinner, paler. I whispered my name over and over, Eleanor Barnes, like a prayer, like an anchor. And then, in the silence, the reflection moved first. It was just a flicker, a twitch at the corner of her mouth. But it was enough. I froze, staring as the faintest smile spread across the face in the mirror. My mouth was still. My breath stopped. And then she whispered, so softly it almost wasn't there, "You're doing great, Mother." The same words from the letters. The candle flame shuddered, and in its trembling light her features blurred. My own face seemed to ripple, and beneath it, for a fraction of a second, I saw Lydia's, young, smooth, unbroken, and she was smiling. I backed away, trembling, but the whisper followed me, echoing through the empty house. You said I'd always been you. The next morning I packed a small bag and went to stay at a motel near the coast. I needed air, space, sanity, but even there, the feeling didn't leave. In the mirror above the sink, in the reflection of passing shop windows, I caught her, always just behind my own eyes. I stopped using mirrors, stopped saying my name out loud, because every time I did, it felt less certain. The doctors told me it was trauma. That identity loss cuts both ways. That after such deep violation, it's not unusual for the victim to absorb pieces of the aggressor to blur the boundaries. Maybe they're right, but sometimes, when I dream, I see Lydia standing at the end of a long hallway, wearing my clothes, holding out her hand, and in the dream, I always take it. One evening, as the sun sank into the sea, I took out the last letter she ever wrote. The one she left before she died, the one I hadn't been ready to read. It was dated the day before her heart stopped. Mother, I finally understand what you meant about mirrors. You once told me they don't show who we are, they show who we remember being. I think I remember now. I was never you. I was just the shadow that followed you too closely. Don't be afraid if you see me sometimes. I'll only appear when you forget who you are, to remind you that you survived. Love, Lydia. I folded the letter carefully and set it down beside the candle. For the first time in months, I didn't feel fear, only a strange, aching peace, Maybe she wasn't haunting me. Maybe she was keeping her promise. As the candle burned low, I looked into the darkened window. The reflection was faint, the two of us almost overlapping, one face, two souls. For a moment, I didn't know which of us was smiling, and maybe, I thought, it didn't matter anymore. Because whether she lived through me or I through her, we had both finally stopped running. The world outside was quiet, the tide whispering against the rocks like a lullaby. I whispered into the stillness, "Good night, my girl." And from somewhere deep inside the silence, I heard the gentlest reply, "Good night, mother."